Hello and welcome to another episode of Younger by the Minute. I'm Jamie Speiser and I'm always here with my lovely partner.
Jennifer Speiser.
And today is being brought to you thanks to Precision Life, Precision Skincare, Precision Nutraceuticals, and Punchline Productions. And today we're going to tackle marriage mindset and the mission. Basically, building life, building business together, and what we've personally been through and how we get through it day to day.
Yeah, I mean, I get asked a lot, like, how do you work with your husband? And the one thing I do think we always worked well together.
Right?
Um, and ironically, we never really fight about money or the normal things that people fight
Or
about.
just over the coffee pot.
Yes, like the little stuff that built up or the pressures that built up. And I do believe that if we didn't open this business, I can tell you I probably would not have been able to or or really been forced to look at myself, because owning a business is a spiritual game. Being in a relationship is a spiritual game,
Right.
and so it can it can really be complicated and a lot. And they always say, "Oh, it's not business, it's personal." But for us, it is. It is personal.
Very much so.
And even owning a small business is personal because you start to develop relationships with people.
With the clients, with your staff.
Yes. And so it's, our team is our family at this point,
Yeah.
they're not just staff, they're not just employees. They are a true, like, it feels like a tribe of brothers and sisters. And,
Right.
we've really that gets complicated and messy sometimes. And
Yes.
so it's making sure that you have the right tools to communicate properly, to not take things personally, to take a step back. So I wanted to pull back the curtain a little bit and really bring this up because I think it's really helpful because even though we don't have children, we also do run a business together.
We have 15 children at work.
Right. And so I do think that, you know, I hope that whatever we talk about today, people can take. If you're running a household, if you're, working, not owning your business, but you guys share a life together, because it all comes down to the same points. Like what we've learned is everybody has the same fears. And the ultimate fear is being a fear of not being loved, a fear of not being good enough, a
Right.
fear of not being worthy of love. And that's what ends up bubbling up. It's
Right.
the undealt with fears and emotions of our own self-worth, because I can speak personally now that I feel better about myself and it's a daily practice.
Right.
I don't get so triggered by you.
Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think, we talk about that, just like business and just whether it's home, like, going back and forth, you have your strong points at home and you have your strong points at work. And I have, mine at home and yours and mine at work. But I think the biggest thing that is the hardest one in both places is communication.
Oh, yeah.
And, that is the biggest thing. And that's when people ask, how do you work with Jen and how does that go? Like, well, she understands me better than anybody. She understands how to talk to me when I need to be pushed a little bit harder. And she knows how to talk to me when she knows that I'm frustrated and I probably need to be left alone. As someone that is a normal business partner isn't going to know you as in depth as we know each other. And so I think that is the biggest thing when it comes down to it is, again, you have the strength to know when to push, but also the strength to know when to back off. And that is all comes back into communication. Same thing with the communication and the tone that's being used. That's always a big factor. So that I think is a big strength when it comes to having the right partner and also the right spouse, because that parlays in the home too. We know when to motivate and when to just let the other one work through it themselves and just be the ear they need and be the support system they need, not to have to be the fixer in that moment.
Yeah, I will say that even I agree with you, but then sometimes I feed off of you too much, like worrying if you're okay. And I
Right.
know that's hard. But I think, again, communication, you understand where I'm coming from. So you'll be like, hey, I'm okay, And so,
Right.
because I don't think that we're ever truly healed or there. Like, I think we heal, but that wiring and firing that happens, in who we are, our own neuroses, our own patterns. I know my tone can be sharp when I'm busy. You have learned that about me, and having the ability to be self-aware and self-accountable is key. And I think it really shifted when we chose to really do the work as individuals. Now, I will say you're a strong man and strong enough to not let your own ego get in the way, and also strong enough to say that you messed up and say that you're sorry. And
Right.
I think people really first need to realize that it actually takes strength to be vulnerable.
Yep.
It takes strength to break down. That's where true strength happens. When we try to be so strong that we can't say sorry or recognize that we're part of the problem, that's the biggest thing. So having that self-awareness, and I think that's the biggest thing, like having your spirituality come first and knowing that your values have to come up in that, and that you guys always are trying to get to the same page, right? We're
Right.
on the same mission. Our end goal is the same.
Right.
So we're on the same team and we have to fight together, not against each other.
Yeah. Personally and
Mhm.
professionally,
Right.
we just like we went on a vacation in the same spots, it's just the same thing. We have the same vision and the same goals for precision. So,
Mhm.
that's always a big piece of it. I think another big piece is being able to separate. And even though that we do a really good job of once we walk out the door of precision, we leave precision at precision. And when we walk in the door, it's we're no longer husband and wife, we're business partners, and being able to do that. We have learned through time that, especially Thursdays was the big one because that was the longest days. And we just noticed that we were kind of bickering over little dumb stuff. We just realized that once we left precision, which is usually about 7 o'clock at night after being there at 5:30 in the morning, that was not a good time to talk about, you know,
Anything?
anything, besides, what are we going to do? Who's cooking or what are we having for dinner? And that was really about it. But I think that's a big part of it too, is the struggle, I would say, is being able to separate the two and knowing how and when. There are definitely times where we have to address certain things because it's priority at home. And there's certain times where we're at work and, the relationship kicks in, but you really got to be able to identify and you got to be able to separate. I think that's the biggest thing because you can't really, even though you're blending, you really can't blend. You got to have a separation from work as a couple.
Yeah, it's almost like you put on a different shield of armor, right? Like,
Right.
it actually made me really proud to know that some of our team has never even known if we've been in an argument. And we haven't argued, honestly, in 3 plus years,
Right.
and I give plant medicine the credit for that, and if
Right.
anybody has questions, we can talk about that, please reach out. But that really helped a lot because that did a lot of that deep shedding,
Right.
that therapy and all the other things couldn't do. But again, like kind of how we've talked about compounding, you
Right.
have to do all these different things to get to where you want to be and to truly get there. But to know that in the past it wasn't known, because it's a detriment to everybody if you can't emotionally regulate or can't learn to, compartmentalize within reason. Sometimes people are too good at compartmentalizing and then it eventually comes up, but everything comes up.
Right.
So I think the biggest thing also is to schedule that time, like have those boundaries. This is when we work, this is when we get to have a conversation. We've blocked time to have some tough conversations. And sometimes we've had to move that meeting because we weren't able to emotionally regulate. And
Right.
that's okay. It doesn't mean that you don't love me or I don't love you. It actually means that we're choosing the relationship before ourselves.
Yep. It's just like one of my leadership coaches says is like, show me your calendar and I'll show you what
Mhm.
you're lagging in. So like if your calendar is nothing filled with work, but it doesn't have anything for date night or anything like that, then it's probably your relationship. And the same thing, if you're not scheduling time with friends, you're probably suffering in the friendship department. If you're not scheduling time to see your brother, sister, mom, dad, and stuff like that, you're probably suffering in that. And then over time, you start to get a little resentful about that, and that's where what they want to call burnout comes from. I don't think there's really a thing called burnout because if you're truly loving what you do day to day, you're not going to burn out. I would say that you probably get stagnant or maybe bored sometimes because you're kind of doing the same thing over and
Or
over,
tired.
or tired because you're just grinding it out every day. But as far as burnout, that's where I kind of push because if you're truly burnt out, then are you just going home and doing nothing? Or do you get excited about going out and meeting your friends? Or, if you're in a service-based business, do you get excited about bringing on a new client, and then working with them because you've never dealt with any of their stuff and you like to work through the problems and solving that. So if you were truly burnt out, then you're like, oh, look, I don't want any more new clients. I don't want to deal with anything or anyone at all. I just want to be completely left alone.
Yeah, I think knowing that, and I think Matthew McConaughey has a really cool, video where he was speaking at, like, a university or something, and he talks about, like, he picks the 5 things that are important to him.
Yep.
You know, it was his career, his wife, his family, like, and every day you have to take inventory, and
Mm,
some days you need to fill one of those buckets more,
mhm.
but then you have to come back and reconcile and
Yep.
make sure that you make the time.
Yep.
And even if, depending on what someone's finances a lot for, right? They might not be able to get a babysitter or to have a date night or something. Be creative.
Yeah.
As long as you always make sure that the relationship is the most important priority, that's key. Because if you have that in your head, then you will do whatever it takes to keep it and to learn about each other. And I do believe like the love languages is key
That's
because
a big
if you're
one.
not talking in the right language to that person, you know, man or woman, like
Or if
what
you're gifting in the wrong way.
right,
Yeah.
and they're not receiving it, it doesn't mean that they don't appreciate it, it
Just the
doesn't
wrong
mean
language.
right, exactly, and so I think, we really should learn more about each other, and I think that we've done a good job with that, but there were times where we didn't have the money for therapy, so it's like, okay, we go to YouTube and we listen to things,
Right.
or there's a lot of resources out there, a
Yeah.
lot.
There's a ton of you can dive into, and, the biggest thing is just, making sure that you're checking in, being supportive, communicating clearly. That's always the biggest one. Even something as simple as you say something and then you ask like, "Can you repeat what you heard?"
Right.
Because what I said and what you heard could be completely 2 different things, and then you respond in a way, and I'm like, "Well, where did that come from?"
Or, like, we don't know what words might be trigger words from childhood,
Right.
and so talking like that, but always making sure that your spouse or your partner is hopefully on the same team as you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing. It takes faith. It takes having faith in something that's bigger than yourself. It's also remembering that your partner did choose you. So even if you don't feel worthy of being chosen,
Right.
you are. And so working through that. But
Showing them grace when they're at their low, like you had said, remember why they married you,
yeah,
like, for better or for worse, or everything with that. You have to remember that sometimes they're going through something and not to take it completely personal. That's where like for me, that was kind of hard at the beginning, but is like letting down my wall and be like, all right, she isn't doing this on purpose. She isn't trying to attack me on purpose. She's actually not in a good mood or had something come up. And so I have to drop my ego and go, how can I help you?
yeah. It's and you do that. You do
I've
that
gotten a
well.
lot better at it, but like you said, going through our journey and our personal allowed me to unravel years of anger, frustration, resentment, fear, all that had to be dropped in order for me to be who I am today. Because, 5, 10 years ago, I was not as good as I am now. I know I'm a much different man than I am now. And again, thanks to your strength, even when I was resistant to wanting to do what we were doing, you stood strong and you showed me and told me why I needed to, but you used communication in a way that resonated with me to get me to go instead of just, basically telling me I was stupid for doing it,
Mhm.
for not doing it.
No, and I never felt that, and I think that's it. It's we both wouldn't be who we are if we didn't believe in each other, like, my codependency was it's a lot easier to worry about how somebody else is feeling versus looking in the mirror and realizing, really what role you play.
Right.
Even if it seems innocent, I think that's the other thing. We're very not like we are at times, but people are codependent because they're looking for something within themselves to be fulfilled.
Right.
And really, you have to fill that up yourself. You have to do that work yourself. You have to strip it all back. And it gets hard before it gets easy.
That's one thing we definitely have learned in business and in personal that in the midst of the hard times, we've talked about is like we know now we're being tested if we're ready to go to the next level.
Mhm.
Because if we keep acting and saying things and behaving in the same way that we were before, that means we have not learned from our previous hard times. And so we're not ready for the next level.
Yeah.
But if we respond in a way that is supportive and like, all right, we know we're going through a hard time, this about, going on. then we level up every single time.
Yeah, and I think that's the purpose because I think it's a spiral, right? And you can either choose to stay, in a one-dimensional flat spiral, or you can ascend and go up the staircase, and it's all cyclical. So you come back around to just deal with it again. And it's going to show up in other ways, in other relationships. So fixing the relationship with yourself truly does allow you to then have relationships with other people. And the reason why people have such, it can be tumultuous in a marriage is because that's the closest partner you have.
Yeah.
So you tend to
Take it out on that person the
take it
worst.
out or push away. Like
Right.
in the beginning, I remember really trying to push you away because I was afraid of being vulnerable.
Right.
And so I think it's really making sure, okay, like how do I take inventory on what am I feeling and process that? And that's where journaling has really helped. So like daily practices of journaling and self-reflection.
And that's one thing we do together every morning.
And it works.
Right.
It works.
You
Or
work on me to do it at night, and
the biggest thing that has helped me with that is sometimes, I'll want to say something or I'll be upset, whether it's about anything, not just us. But by writing it out and allowing myself to kind of dump my emotions, I can then take a step back and reflect. And sometimes it's not even worth talking about.
right.
Sometimes it's like, okay, I need to get myself together, because when it all comes at you from day to day, you people tend to project.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest thing. It's huge. It's such a good tool. As far as other tools, like I love when we are able to go on a walk. Sometimes we have our best meetings on walks.
Right.
Sometimes we
I even do my walk and talks.
right. Because when you move your body, you move energy.
Correct.
So if you get to think and you get to be creative and that's the simple little things that can happen. The other thing, part of why I think it's a lot easier to understand each other is because of the time invested.
Right.
You start to figure out each other, you start to figure out yourself as people mature, all that stuff. But the one thing that I do think is really, really important because I don't think that things all have an up and a down. So the longer you stay together, sometimes it's hard to keep intimacy alive.
Right.
So making sure that you do the little things that we leave notes for each other still at work or do something sweet for each other and have those intimate moments. It's making sure that you don't get lost in the partnership of business for parents or spouses that aren't in business together, lost in your children.
Right.
You always have to make sure that it should always be faith in the relationship first. So God in the marriage first.
Yep.
Putting in order to be a good partner, you have to be able to be strong enough to look at yourself and really figure that out.
Well, even faith in the business, faith is the biggest thing. Like on the board I have written in our office is let go, let God. Like it just, you got to have that faith that it's like, as long as you can check the boxes at the end of the day that you did the things that you needed to do to move the needle, then the rest of it is out of kind of your control. That's where the faith and trust and higher power come in, believing that your destiny is written and you're on the path of what you're supposed to be on.
Right.
You just got to pay attention to the signs with that big part of it. But, you brought up the point or two about journaling, with that's one big thing that was really helped me. Sometimes it's not even journaling, but like when I get really upset, I'll write my emotions out because I'm initially just getting all that negative emotion I have out. And then I come back and I clean it up and I clean it up and I clean it up. And finally I get to a point where I can talk about it that doesn't have emotion behind it, that doesn't have anger, resentment, fear, or anything about it. It's just matter of fact. It's just, this is what it is. This is how I felt. And this is what I need to do to move forward.
Well, and also I know like when you're upset or I'm upset, we'll go for a walk and then we'll journal. And I can tell you this, learning to fix the relationship with yourself in order to have the better relationship with your partner, that's the hardest part. Then it allows you to have better relationships with everybody else because it's the biggest, I don't know, weight to carry sometimes. It's the hardest part to do. And I think the other thing, whether you're in business or just, running a house, like I said, is understanding who's best at what role, right?
Yeah.
And staying in your lane when it comes to that role. You can support, but like you're better with finances. There's other things that I'm better at. And I just like, we don't have to, we can check in, we can talk about it, but it's just, it's playing up to each other's strengths.
Right. I've always, talked and made joke. It's that, but it's like I'm the rocket ship and you're the anchor, so I like to just go, go, go. And I like to throw the ideas out, work on them, move on to the next thing, and it's about 80% complete. And you're like, hey, we need to, like, that's where you'll anchor me down. And like, hey, before we move on to the next thing, we need to finish this stuff. I'm like, all right, I know. But it's like, I have that vision and all that stuff I want to get done. But at the same time, you anchor yourself, and sometimes you're a little slow to move, and sometimes I'll get you to move. Like, no, we
Yeah.
got to move.
Right.
Like, we're overthinking this. We're going too deep into this. We just got to start moving, otherwise we're going to be dead in the water.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's it. Like, it's understanding that nothing's ever perfect. So
Right.
always take what you can from it and take a step back. And when it comes to a relationship, choosing to be in a relationship is literally one of the best gifts that God has ever given us,
Hmm.
right? But it's also one of the hardest. And I think that is with everything. Duality exists in all of life. And so it's perspective and how we choose to look at everything. If we're having, some time where it feels like we might be a little bit disconnected, we can reflect and take away from that and then work to get better at it. But it's all about choosing each other.
Right. And again, kind of correlating it to, every relationship is going to have its struggle, and
Mhm.
every relationship needs to be nurtured in every way. And when things get hard, people think it's easier to walk away,
Mhm.
not knowing like the next relationship is going to have struggles. It's going to have this and that. The same thing is like a job, it just because the job's getting harder like that, you just don't go find a new job, because that job's going to present new problems too. The thing with it is you have to recognize that it all takes work. And if, like we've been leading up to, if you do the daily work, if you and all that stuff, then those hard moments are less and less and less. Things typically don't creep in until someone is feeling unfulfilled.
Yeah. And the other thing is I just don't, the stuff that makes me be the person I don't want to be, I just don't even play around
Well,
in
that's
that zone anymore.
circle of influence.
Yeah,
That's one
right.
thing too, is, very important about who you hang around with,
Mhm.
who you take advice from. The big thing is like, taking advice through someone who just went through a divorce on your current situation probably isn't the best thing, because they're still a little upset and bitter about what they're going through. So, listen to them, but I probably wouldn't take too much of what they're saying with a grain of salt, because they're just, letting loose on you on what they've been through.
That's a good point though also. Like yes, we all need to connect and support each other, but if you continually talk about your spouse in a negative way,
Right.
one, if you're that unhappy, do something to change it. But
Right.
two, it's like eventually you're going to start to believe those thoughts and words and actions, and then your friends aren't going to like that person, and so then it's just like find somebody that is a third party that is capable to help you, right? Or find another way to deal with it. But the more you focus on the problem, the bigger the problem gets.
Right.
The more you focus on the solution and how you can get there, it's so much better because we aren't in each other's heads.
Mm,
We know each other very, very well. Sometimes I feel like you're in my head,
mm.
but it's, you don't know everything I'm thinking or feeling. And sometimes we all don't as well until we unravel all that's happened to you prior to the relationship.
Right. And the one thing, whether you're in business together or a relationship, the one thing I can say the best is like, we have Jane,
Yeah.
and she's our therapist. And, been seeing her now for almost 12 years.
Mhm.
And people ask, well, why do you still see it as 12 years? Is because one, now we kind of talk about some stuff with business, but it's always, for me and you, it was a safe space for us to talk without cutting each other off.
Mhm.
Even if our voices got raised a little bit, we weren't shutting each other down. It was like we kind of, like, if you want to say, had a referee,
Mhm.
but at the same time, I think we kept our composure better, because we didn't want to, act in a way that we weren't proud of in front of her. And so I think that has always given us the platform to be able to speak openly and resolve things without things just, shit hitting the fan.
Yeah, we've done a few things that worked, like Jane, obviously really getting back into our spirituality,
Yeah.
and making that a constant and making time for that, journaling. And then there's things out there that are helpful. Like we had like the spouse devotional where you read something every day
Yep.
and and it's just making sure that those little things, it's just like working out or it's just like taking care of yourself or your finances. It's all those little things add up for a big impact and a big reward. the grass is green where you water it. I know it's super cliche to say, but it's true.
It's true.
And you also have to fill yourself up.
Yep.
You have to. I used to think that was so selfish of me, but if I take care of myself, I feel more confident and more secure and stronger to then be there for you and to then also receive what you have for me. Like when I wasn't taking care of myself and I didn't feel good about myself, I couldn't even receive your love.
No.
And then I
You're
also couldn't,
exhausted.
right. And then I also couldn't, be the spouse or the
Yeah.
partner I wanted to be. So I think that's the
And
biggest
that's
thing.
also where miscommunication happened, and
Mhm.
we weren't being heard or misheard or whatever it was. But that's where the term is. Sometimes you have to be selfish to be selfless,
Mhm.
and it is 100% true. You have to take care of yourself first, so you can take care of anything and everything else and everyone else after.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
No, thank you. I wouldn't be who I am today without you, so I do know that. So thank you for tuning into another episode of Younger by the Minute. We appreciate everyone, and that's it. I'm out.
No, I'm out too. And I wouldn't be who I am without you. And it's intention. Intention's everything. And
Yep.
I love you.
Love you.